Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. So I was expecting this week to feel a little bit dispiriting. I mean, Kendrick Lamar falls off the #1, the aftermath of Damn as the chart naturally corrects to a less promising state. But here's the honest truth about it. Despite some absolute garbage on the Hot 100 right now, I'm generally pretty pleased with the current state of affairs in modern pop music. Good songs have held enough traction to make a serious shot at the year-end list. I'm seeing some promising continuity going into the summer, and while there are some pretty big problems, they feel isolated in comparison with some larger trends. Or let me put it another way. Yeah, Kendrick Lamar, he lost the #1, but if he's handing it off to a decent Bruno Mars song, I'm finding it hard to complain. And that takes us naturally to our top 10. And here's something important to consider. Even though That's What I Like by Bruno Mars went to #1, it got there despite not being at the top in any category. Sure, great YouTube, solid airplay, great sales and streaming gains, but it also seemed to peak on radio this week. And that means I don't exactly see this having a lot of staying power if something bigger manages to disrupt it. Similar case for Shape of You by Ed Sheeran clinging on to #2. Huge airplay and mostly stable sales, but it's losing on streaming and its radio peak is steadily shrinking down. Compare this to Humble by Kendrick Lamar, which yes fell #3. Sure, it's a loss as the streaming margin dropped, but it still rules it, sales is surging, and much to my utter astonishment, radio is actually getting on board with this. But it's got a meaty challenge from Despacito, from Louis Fonsi, Daddy Yankee, and the remix courtesy of Justin Bieber, which is dominant on sales, picked up tremendous streaming, has always been huge on YouTube, and also has real radio traction. It's a major competitor here. Now all this places Mask Off by Future again at #5 in a bit of an awkward place. Streaming is solid, it picked up some sales, and YouTube is not bad, but without the same radio traction or dominance in any one category, I don't really see this getting much higher without some weaknesses above it. Then there is the rebound for something just like this by the Chainsmokers featuring Coldplay up to #6 on all categories, especially on radio where it still has some real staying power. Not really enough to take it much higher, but enough for it to stick around. What kind of blew my mind is that DNA by Kendrick Lamar is still in the top 10 at #7. Of course, the radio's not touching it, and yeah, sales did decline, but apparently still has enough streaming to hold up, which I would argue is a net positive. The more it holds on, the better chance that other formats will come to embrace it at some point. Hell, look at what happened with I Spy by Kyle and Lil Yachty, which yes, declined to #8 as radio seems to be wavering, but it became a crossover on the radio from streaming simply because it stuck around. What I'm actually dreading is that it'll also happen to EXO Tour Life by Lil Uzi Vert at #9. And yeah, I'm gonna stop ragging on this song a little bit. I finally had the appeal of the song explained to me, but I still don't like it, or I like seeing that its streaming and YouTube traction is actually holding up. Now finally, to round things out and entering the top 10, our first new arrival, we have It Ain't Me by Kygo and Selena Gomez at #10. Yeah, I still really like the song. I'm happy it's here thanks to boost on streaming, sales, strong airplay. It might actually have some good staying power, and that's all positive. But on the opposite note are losers and dropouts. In the latter category, I was actually a little bit surprised how few of Kendrick Lamar's songs dropped off the Hot 100. Instead, with the two most considerable losses coming to Fast by Luke Bryan and Dirt on My Boots by John Party, which unfortunately might just miss the year-end list because Kendrick knocked it below the top 50 on its 20th week on the charts. And sure, while Kendrick Lamar did lose a lot, Loyalty with Rihanna fell to 33, Triple X with U2 fell to 56, Element went to 36, Ya slipped down to 65, Feel fell to 69, Pride dropped to 71, Lust faded down to 75, Fear dropped to 91, and God dropped to 96. He wasn't the only loser. For one, we had the losses that continued on from last week, where it looks like Kendrick just kind of kickstarted the process, like Chained to the Rhythm by Katy Perry and Skip Marley falling hard to 51, Selfish by Future and Rihanna down to 93, Deja Vu by J. Cole down to 100, and sadly, Green Light by Lorde down to 86. Now, don't get me wrong, I think this song will have a chance to recover when Melodrama finally comes out, but it's not promising as of right now. But then there are the sudden drops to No Frauds from Nicki Minaj, Drake, and Lil Wayne, a diss track that seems to have utterly flopped when they tried to make it a single with a video and everything, and How Far I'll Go by Alili Carvalho taking a big hit down to 89. Finally, The Cure by Lady Gaga slipped down to 62 off the debut, but I'm not really all that surprised by that. Even despite the video apparently apparently coming, the ambivalence from her fan base about the song, that speaks volumes here. But of course, the bigger story comes in our gains and returning entries, making up a lot of ground from Kendrick's losses. And honestly, there were less than I had expected. Sure, in returning entries, I'm not all that surprised to see Problems by Black back up to 72, or Country's return of If I Told You by Darius Rucker up to 94. Although I still have no idea why anyone wants Still Got Time by Zayn and Party Next Door back up to 81. But our gains, they're a mixed bag indeed. So let's start off with the debuts from last week that actually have some traction. Unfortunately, people think Good Life by G-Eazy and Kalani is worth anything, so it's up to 59. But so is The Night We Met by Lord Huron up to 84, as the whole 13 Reasons Why phenomenon persists a little bit longer. Then there's Country making some inoffensive gains with In Case You Didn't Know by Brett Young up to 34, Hurricane by Luke Combs up to 41, although that song's not that good, and How Not To by Dan and Shay up to 85. Then we had tracks making a recovery from last week, most of which are not for the better, like Heavy by Linkin Park featuring Kiara up to 54, or Now or Never by Halsey up to 52. At least Shining by DJ Khaled, Jay-Z, and Beyonce went back up to 57, but I'm only kind of lukewarm on that song as a whole. And on the topic of mediocrity to garbage, Believer by Imagine Dragons remains brang and annoying at 37, Drowning by A Boogie with the Hoodie and Kodak Black is saved by its hook up to 55, which because it is kind of catchy, inexplicably pulling up At My Best by Machine Gun Kelly and Haley Steinfeld up to 63, and yet I can't say I'm ultimately all that down on this list of gains, because we got 3 great songs picking up big gains. Slide by Calvin Harris, Frank Ocean, and Migos up to 30. Redbone by Childish Gambino somehow still sticking around up to 45. And finally, picking up some momentum, Castle on the Hill by Ed Sheeran up to 47. And it's about damn time. Now, all this means is that for once we actually have a pretty sparse list of new arrivals. So let's aim to keep this as short and sweet as possible and start off with number 93. My Girl by Dylan Scott.
Dancing around, causing a scene. That's my girl, sipping Crown of Sprite and a ball cap turned back. Ooh, she got me like, yeah, baby girl, you gonna done it again. Making all the guys wishing you were with them, but I bet they don't see what I see when I see my girl.
So I'm not even gonna lie, when I first saw the name Dylan Scott, my brain kind of confused him with Callum Scott. I was reminded of that horrendous Dancing on My Own cover, and I got really angry. Now, Dylan Scott, thankfully, isn't in that genre. He's another new country singer who dropped a debut album last year that nobody bothered me to review, and who seems to have made the mistake of signing to Curb Records. Hell, the guy's younger than me, we all make mistakes at that age. And yet, the more I listened to his first song to break through onto the Hot 100, I just got this really sinking feeling in my gut that Curb Records is gonna mismanage this guy right into the ground. Because it's a damn shame, because he actually has some potential. For one, he's got one of the most distinctive and expressive baritones that I've heard in modern country, especially mainstream country, in some time, that with the right direction could easily fit into a Randy Houser or a Brothers Osborne sort of mold, especially given his liking for a slightly scuzzier guitar pickup to balance out against the piano melody and what sounds like real drums. I'll give him props for that. And where the song stumbles, unfortunately, is in the writing. It's another bro country anthem to a girl that's only different from the cliches in that this girl apparently likes to rap to Eminem. Now, that's a reference I would never expect in a country song. But as it is, I don't know, it's passable. But again, I know what happens with Curb Records. I saw what happened with Tim McGraw. I would not expect to hear much more from Dylan Scott anytime soon, and that's a bit of a shame. Number 90, Hard Times by Paramore.
Gonna take it down and laugh for you to cry. And I still don't know how I even survive. Hard times. And now to get to rock bottom.
So apparently, when I reviewed Paramore's self-titled album for my first anniversary on this channel back in 2014, I may have alienated a lot of people who think I don't like this group. And honestly, it's more that I wasn't all that impressed or interested by that album. And while I found their pop turn thematically consistent in some of the writing, the execution, at least to me, left something to be desired from a lot of the writing to the production. But hey, now that they're more firmly established in indie pop, losing their bassist along the way, but regaining their old drummer, maybe they would stick the landing a little better? Well, honestly, Hard Times is a bit of a weird listen. A sort of colorful new wave song that should entirely be up my alley, but lands in an intentionally discordant place that I'm not sure flatters anything here. Hayley Williams has described the lyrics as relating to her own depression when it would come to making this new album, and man alive, you can tell from the slightly deadened tone in her voice to the squealing points where you can tell that she'd be happy to hit rock bottom, if only just to feel something. I just wish that the production and melody mirrored that bleakness in the lyrics a little bit more effectively, because of the garish marimba tone to the jagged spikes of guitar playing against the firmer bass groove, courtesy of producer Justin Mendel Johnson, who seems to bring in that same sort of Technicolor approach that he did 4 years ago, and all these colorful melodies that are clashing across the song. It doesn't really reflect the tone of the writing at all. And yeah, I get that some of that is intentionally highlighting that there is something not quite right with Hayley Williams, but it might have succeeded a little bit too well, or might not exactly have pulled off what they could have while still making a good pop song. As it is, I think I can respect this song, but I think I'll like it a lot more in the context of the album, so we'll see. Number 87, Doremi by blackbear.
So fucking done with all the games you play. I ain't no tic-tac-toe. Stick the X and O's on another note. I'm Doremi, but so fucking done with you, girl. So say the X and O's on another note. I'm Ghost.
Okay, you're gonna have to follow me on this one because I doubt the majority of you know who this guy is, and the fact that he's been behind some pretty significant singles for the past few years. For one, he worked with Mike Posner on Justin Bieber's Boyfriend before doing a lot of work with G-Eazy, Hoodie Allen, Nash, Machine Gun Kelly, basically a fair chunk of the white rappers who have crossed over into the mainstream in the past few years and haven't been all that interesting, along with co-writing some of the better songs from Tokyo Police Club's last album in 2014. Well, 2017 has been a busy year for this guy because he teamed up with Mike Posner again for Mansions, which I've been told is an utterly insane project that I have less than zero interest in covering, and yet, with the lead-off single from his newest self-released album called Digital Drug Lord, he landed on the Hot 100. And I'm a little bit at a loss of how to properly describe this song. Imagine The Weeknd drowning one of his bitchiest songs with generic trap production, no significant groove, and entirely too much pitch shifting, and you'd be in the right ballpark. But sure, the piano line's not bad, and the song does build to some in the later choruses, but I think the larger problem is how generally unimpressed I am with blackbear himself as a performer, because I've heard this song done better before, most notably when Yelawolf made Heartbreak and sound righteously pissed at this gold digger taking money that he did not have. It was an ugly song, sure, but it earned the ugliness with bars and intensity and a fantastic hook. This, with its nursery rhyme hook and the flubbed rhymes on the verse, tabs does not rhyme with bag, dude. I know you're trying to force it, but it doesn't work. And how willowy and frail his delivery is? No, I don't like this at all. It's unconvincing and pissy in the worst way possible, even if it is kind of straightforward in its bitchiness. I can appreciate that, but it might as well be the perfect intro for number 68, Attention by Charlie Puth.
Baby, you just hate the thought of me with someone new. Yeah, you just want attention. I knew from the start. You're just making sure I'm never getting over you.
You know, after Charlie Puth's debut album, 9-Track Mind, got rightfully panned by pretty much everyone, including me, I had the hope that he'd maybe take a step back and reflect, maybe taking a few years off to refine his sound before dropping more singles. Instead, he's got a lead-off single for his upcoming sophomore release, and just like blackbear, this is a song blasting an attention-seeking gold digger who Puth has dumped and yet is trying to get back into his life. Now, credit where it's actually due, the sharper groove on this track actually has some swagger to it, and Charlie Puth is at least a little bit more credible at selling exasperated, lingering feelings than blackbear was at really anything. And hell, even his production doesn't sound as thin and fragile as it did on 9-Track Mind. I will give him points for that, but it's not something I can say for his vocals. Look, there's no way around how weak and thin his delivery is, especially on the hook and especially in his upper register, which doesn't have the body to truly hold these notes all that well, especially against a groove that is as strong as this one is. And the vocal production doesn't give him the body with which to work with in his backing vocals or tone. Yeah, imagine you give this song like this to Usher or Trey Songz, and how much more impressive it would be than Charlie Puth, and it would give you an idea of my opinion on this song. It is an improvement, but that raises it to passable. Not good. Number 64, Lust for Life by Lana Del Rey featuring The Weeknd.
keeps us alive, keeps us alive. Endless flight, endless flight, keeps us alive, keeps us alive.
Okay, so when Lana Del Rey put out Love early a couple months back, I was happy that for the first time in years, I actually liked a Lana Del Rey song. So when I heard that she was teaming up with The Weeknd for the most obvious follow-up possible, I figured this could be a surefire win for her, even if I wasn't really pleased that she was jacking the title of a classic Iggy Pop song. Sadly, I wouldn't put it in the same ballpark as her last single, mostly because it feels pretty inert and not especially engaging or interesting. And I think that starts with The Weeknd here. For as much as they have cited that they're obviously singing about each other in their music, they don't showcase a lot of chemistry on this song, mostly because it places them both in their upper register, which is not a good sign, and it also tamps back a lot of the intensity. But there are bigger issues than that, because despite the hints of revving guitars and the hints of bells and a thicker swell of synth, none of it has the type of smolder that can really give the song the sort of edge and danger that it desperately needs. And yeah, the writing doesn't help. Yes, Lana Del Rey is trying to evoke old school rock and roll tropes, but obsession with the image doesn't give you the soul beneath it. For as much as this album references Billy Joel and the Hollywood lust for life, I don't hear the raw teenage passion on this song. I don't know, I don't think this is precisely bad, and the production is certainly in the right ballpark in comparison with some of the stuff she did in Ultraviolence or Honeymoon, but when it comes to the melodrama that's Lana at her best, this kinda missing the mark. And finally, number 44, There's Nothing Holding Me Back by Shawn Mendes.
Baby, there's nothing holding me back. You take me places that tear up my reputation, manipulate my decisions. Baby, there's nothing holding me back. There's nothing holding me back.
You know, a casual observer of my channel would see Charlie Puth, Lana Del Rey, and ending with Shawn Mendes and would probably think this was a living hell for me. You all know I used to like this kid, right? Or at least to have some sort of hope that he could make quality music. Unfortunately, since he settled into cranking out singles co-written and produced by Teddy Geiger, it's been a dispiriting run, and we really didn't need another single off of Illuminate after Mercy, so this... Okay, here's where things get kind of weird, because I didn't remember covering this song on Illuminate, and Discogs clearly illuminates that this song wasn't even on that album, at least not on any physical release, and yet on streaming services, Wikipedia, and Genius, they all said this was the first song on the album? I call shenanigans, or record execs trying to cram in a new single and praying that we don't hear the difference for a reissue, and yeah, there was no way that I wasn't gonna catch this, mostly because this is actually a decent song. Yeah, it's entirely too bare bones in its main acoustic groove, but by the time the hook kicks up with some rougher guitars that can actually build a little bit of simmer to it, it's not bad at all. Even if I do think with the acoustic harmony, I wish it picked up a little bit more richness there to really fill out the melody. I think the biggest problem here is Shawn Mendes himself, not the writing, believe it or not, which has him pulled along by some girl that's pulling him into unexplored territory and throwing him off balance, which kind of works for a character like Shawn Mendes, but my issues come in his delivery. And man, you can tell that he's trying to sound raw and channel some bluesy howl, but the kid's 18. You can tell that it's just out of his dramatic range for his voice at this point. He doesn't have that grit yet. Still, points for trying, and I prefer to be on the side of defending this song than attacking it. No wonder Island tried to slip this onto the album. It's easily one of the better tracks that would have been on Illuminate. And you know what? I'm sorry, Paramore fans, but because as of now, I'm not really digging into the dissonance on Hard Times, not really my thing. I'm giving the best of the week to There's Nothing Holding Me Back by Shawn Mendes. Now, let me make this abundantly clear. I wouldn't say anything this week rises to the level of very good or even all that good altogether. It's pretty unimpressive all around, and this doesn't hold a candle to a song like DNA last week. But that also means that giving worse this week to Do Re Mi by blackbear doesn't say much either. It's more mediocre to bad than an outright atrocity. Sometimes you get weeks like this. Let's hope that Gorillaz manages to sell enough albums to land a few singles on the Hot 100 next week. It's been in the bubbling under for entirely too long. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.